So before we get into tracing your stuff and bringing your own artwork in, which can be a little bit more complicated, I thought we'd just start off with drawing directly into Flash. So I've just created a whole new blank document, just going File and New, and you get met with this, okay? So again, we're just going to set up the frames per second to be 25, and we're going to change that to our width to 910, our height to 500, and there we go. It's a good idea. I always I'll save it. So this is actually going to be an 8-ball, so let's call this 8-ball. So just File Save rather, or Command S, Control S on a PC, and get into the habit of doing that regularly, because Animate will crash. Once you start to get more involved and you've got multiple layers and objects and stuff like that, you'll get the spinning ball of death. You'll get just crashes. It won't save. You'll have to force shut down, all that sort of stuff. So it can be the difference between losing a few minutes worth of stuff to a few hours. I've seen people work for a few hours before and then go, oh, I better save, and then it freezes when they go to save. So get into the habit of just holding down. Anytime I make sort of a slight change, I'll hold down Command and tap S on my keyboard, and it just updates it. It will save yourself a lot of heartache later on, so get used to that. So even though it's blank and I've done nothing, I've saved it, given it a name, and then from now on I just go Command S, or Control S on a PC, and it'll update those changes. So let's use some of our tools here. So I'm going to use my circle tool here, or my oval tool I should say. And down here with my fill, I'm going to use make everything black. So I've got my fill and I've got my line. So for demonstration purposes, firstly, I might just make it blue. And with my tool, I'm just going to do that. So you can see there, stroke, line, fill is blue. Now, if I want to move them, if I just click and hold and move, it doesn't bring the line with it. It treats them. If I just go Command Z to undo, it treats them separately. So you need to double click to select both if they're still a drawing shape and you're going to move them around. Okay. And then you need to remember not to double click later on. That sounds confusing. We'll get to that. But just so you're aware that a line and a fill are two separate things. Okay, even though they might be part of the same object, you draw them together. So what I'm doing there, I explain, is just a marquee selection. So just using your arrow tool and dragging around multiple objects. Well, anything you drag around will be selected, and then I can press delete. Okay, so I'm going to use my fill, change my fill rather to black and my line to black, and I'm going to use my oval tool, and I'm going to draw myself a circle, just like that. I'll use shift so it's perfect. And then I'm going to change my fill to white. And I'm going to draw another. And then I'm going to use my text tool, this letter T right there. And I'm going to draw a square there. And I'm going to press the letter number 8. And you can see I can move that around, but it's not ideal because it's white on white. So once with your properties, once you've selected an object, it changes the properties to that, and then you can see it's all the regular sort of font stuff you'd be used to from any old program. So you've got where it says family, that's your font. You can change that to whatever, and the important one for us is clicking on color, changing it to black so we can see it on the white background, and then you can just click on any old font that you want. Yeah, I might leave it as that. And then I'm just going to, with the size, you can move your mouse over to get left and right arrow, so you can just drag it up. Okay, that's not so bad. And then you can just move it around until it fits. Yeah. And then you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard to move it pixel by pixel just to get it exactly where you want it to be. So one last thing we want to do before we animate our ball is to click on the fill color like that. And we're going to go down here to our fill, and we've got this little second one from left. We've got a couple of gradients there. I'll use this linear one a little bit later on. But this one here is called a radial gradient, second from left. I'm going to click on that, and it changes our fill to a radial gradient. So it's basically, it starts off with white here, and it's spreading out to become black around the edges. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just click and hold on my transform tool and choose the option beneath it, which is gradient transform tool. And then I'm just going to bring in the size of it and then move it up here. Okay. And it just gives the sort of illusion, illusion of there being light shining on the ball. All right. So that illusion spoiled a little bit by how straight on that number is. You might want to skew that a little bit, which you can do by going back to your transform tool. Okay, so if you move around the lines like that, that's your skew. Around the corners is your rotate, and around the corners like that is a nudge. So I might leave it like that. That's not so bad. It's not awesome either, but actually might just rotate it just a little bit like that. That's probably a little bit better. Yeah, it's not so bad. Okay, so we've got our ball now. So like I was saying before, this is made up of a fill for the circle, the line, a letter, another circle, line that goes with that, etc. So we've got a number of things. So, but before we can animate this, we want to use what's called a tween. And a tween only works with symbols or objects. So we need to convert this to a symbol first. So I'm going to, again, using my marquee selection, just with my arrow tool selected, I'm just going to click and hold and drag around the ball. Anything inside this square that I've dragged will be selected. So all the lines, all the fields, text, the lot. Now I'm going to right click anywhere on that selected object and choose convert to symbol. We want our type to be movie clip, and we're just going to call the object 8-ball. Make your life a lot easier by naming your symbols as you go. If you end up with, you'll use a lot of symbols. And if you end up with like symbol 1, symbol 2, symbol 900, you have to click on everyone to figure out what's what. Whereas if you give it a name, later on when you want to edit something or fix something, it'll be much easier to find in your library. Okay, so go OK. And now it's a symbol. So what I was saying before about remembering to double click is that what it's essentially done is joined all those together. So if I click out on an empty part of the stage here so it's deselected, I only now need to click on it once. And we get this blue, what's called a bounding box, and our little registration points there. So I can now drag it around and everything stays together. Now, you can see here scene 1, there's nothing there, just scene 1. It tells me that I'm in the main timeline for my animation. If I were to double click this, like I was saying before, it brings up this symbol, an 8-ball. Okay, because we're now in symbol edit mode for this actual symbol itself. So if you forget that you don't need to double click anymore because it's a symbol and start and double click and start doing animation up here, it will you'll be doing it inside the symbol and not your actual timeline. And then the next time you open it, be like, where did it all go? I lost it. Then you'll freak out. Okay, so it's important to remember that because it's a common mistake that a lot of people make when they first start animating is to forget and keep double clicking things. And when you do and start adding tweens and stuff up here, it makes things very difficult. So, first things first, like I was saying before, your library is important. Now that we've made that a symbol, over in your library, it's created this movie clip called 8-ball. And you can just drag that straight out of your library onto any scene, any part, as much as you want. Okay? Don't want them, but you can. And each example of it on the stage is called an instance. So if we go up to properties now with it selected, you can give this one an instance name so you can keep track of everything. And it tells you right there, this is an instance of the movie clip called 8-ball. Open symbol properties, that's the thing that came up before. Okay? So before you can use a tween and animate, you need to have made it a symbol, which we've now done. The next thing you need to get used to, because this is a process, is using keyframes. So a keyframe basically is something that enables you to make change without affecting stuff that's come before it. So this little circle here with a dot in it is a keyframe, right there. That little circle there is a keyframe. So if I go up here now to say frame 75, and I right click and I choose insert keyframe, it adds another one. Okay, So what I'm going to do now is click on that keyframe I've just added at frame 75, and just a reminder, at 25 frames a second, that means it's going to take 3 seconds. 25 is 1 second, another 25 is 2 seconds, another 25 is 3 seconds. And it tells you right there, that will take 3 seconds. So it's actually making your life easier. So in that keyframe, we're just going to drag it to the right. Okay, so now I can either, now that I've got another keyframe, I can either use my playhead here, which is my red line, I can grab that and drag it around, or I can use these numbers to click around. So click back to frame 1. Remember that these numbers are just labels. So if I say click on frame, say 75, I want you to find the number 75 and then click in the square underneath it. These are the actual frames, all these ones here. The numbers up here are just frame labels to tell you where you should be. Okay, so if you go back and click in frame 1, you're going to do that. Now, to test my animation, to see if it's working, I'm going to press the return or the enter key on my keyboard. That was pretty exciting. So it's done exactly what we told it to do. We created a keyframe and we put our 8 ball in the bottom left-hand corner. We then did nothing, and then at frame 75, we added another keyframe and we put it in the bottom right-hand corner. So it doesn't animate, it just jumps from one corner to the other at that particular point in time. But that's where tweens come in handy. As I've said, tweens are, the word tween is short for in between. So we choose our start point and our end point, and then we right click anywhere between those 2 points, those 2 keyframes, and we choose create classic tween. We'll cover motion tween later on. When I say motion tween, I'm actually sort of referring to classic tween, but they both do the same job, they just operate differently, and classic tweens are a little bit easier to use to start with. So just use classic tweens for the moment. So if I click on create classic tween, if everything's been done correctly, this will go purple and we'll have a nice smooth line that is an arrow. And then we can click back on frame 1, press return again, and our ball animates, which is a bit exciting. So, I was just thinking that. So, and that's it, because basically it's filled in between. I've chosen start point, the end point, and then it just moves it between those 2 points. Now, it doesn't look as realistic because the ball's not spinning, but there's an easy fix to that. If we click in frame 1, over in our properties now, we're checking out the frame properties. Down here, we've got a tweening section now that we've added tweens to it. And one of those options is rotate, right there. So we can choose CW, which is clockwise, or CCW, which is counterclockwise, or anti-clockwise. So we're going to choose clockwise, and then how many times we want it to rotate. Again, you can just click on that and type a number, or you can just click and hold and drag. So I'm going to get it to rotate 3 times. Press return again. Okay, so it adds more realism to it. So the ball's rolling, but the shining light rolls with it as well. Okay, so that's a problem. I'm not going to fix it at the moment, but what you would want to do is create a separate object for the shine and rotate it at the same way. Okay, it adds a little bit more work, but it will add more realism to your animation. At the moment, we've got rolling, which is good, which is all I wanted to show you. There we go. But our shining light is different. Now, obviously, the easy fix for that right now is just to take the shine off. We can go back to our library, double click on our 8 ball symbol, click on our fill here, go back and get rid of the gradient and just change it to straight up black. Go back to our scene, press return, and our ball rolls without the shine. That's an easy fix. But if you like the shine and you want it to be there, you'd want it to be in this timeline, in your main timeline, a separate layer. Okay, so you would draw a shape, create that on the layer above, and then animate it at the same pace, but not rotate it, and then that'll just float above it. It'll move with the circle, with the ball, and it'll make it look more realistic, like shining on it from above. So, okay, so that's how tweens work. You choose your start point and your end point, and then you right-click and choose create classic tween. So it's important to remember those steps. If you draw something, you must convert it, you must select it and convert it to a symbol first, a movie clip, and it'll be then saved in your library. You then must create a keyframe before you make changes. So a second keyframe, you've got the first one, so your start point. You then must make your endpoint of the animation you want to add, and then make that change, and then right click and choose keyframe. So if we want to keep moving the ball now, we could basically go forward another 75 frames to frame 150, right click, choose insert keyframe. So we've now got the start point and the end point for our animation. Frame 75 is the start point at the bottom right hand corner. Frame 150 is our end point, so we're just going to move it back. Move it back to the bottom left hand corner. And again, we don't need to convert it to a symbol this time, obviously, because it already is. We've already done that. And then we can just right click anywhere between these two keyframes, our start and our end point. Choose Create Classic Tween. And then if we go back to frame 1 and press return, it's going to roll across over 3 seconds and then come back over 3 seconds. Okay, I didn't add the rotation to that bit, so I can just click on frame 75, back to my properties, here's rotation. I want it to rotate the opposite direction this time, so I'll do counterclockwise and 3. Okay, go back to the start, try again. So it's rolling forwards 3 times over 3 seconds and then bouncing back the other way. Okay, pretty straightforward. So, like I've mentioned previously, or maybe I haven't, but it's important to remember that if you're going to use a tween to animate like we just have, tweens get confused about what you want to animate if there's more than one thing on the layer. So if you're going to do anything else now, you must add another layer. This 8 ball and its tweens need to be the only thing that exists on this layer. Okay, so firstly, it's a good idea to name your label your layers so you know what's what. So I'm just going to double click that and call it 8 ball. And then if I want to do other stuff, I'm just going to create, over here you can see I've got this page, it looks like a page with a corner turned up, this little icon. If I hold my mouse over it without clicking, it says new layer. Okay, so I've now got a new layer. I'm going to double click that, I'm going to call it table. Okay, so let's pretend that this is going to be one big, I'll go back to frame 1 here, a big table. So an easy way is to just use our rectangle tool, change the fill to like sort of the green felt that we see on pool tables, and then just draw a big square around the stage. So we now can't see our ball because this layer is above it. And like I've said, the higher up it is, the closer to the front of the screen it is. So we can just move that by clicking and holding and dragging it below and letting go. Okay, so now we can press return again. So you get more creative and draw pockets and draw the side of the pool table and stuff like that. But that's essentially how you do it. If you wanted to have another ball, or if you wanted to have it hit, say the white ball comes along and hits it and then sends it off, you would draw another layer, double click, call it white ball, and do the same thing. So we can do that. Why don't we just firstly, we'll just click on this first frame, and we'll start the black ball about there, so it starts in the middle of the stage. Okay, so now we can just go back, make sure I've got our white ball layer selected. An easy way to avoid confusion is just see this lock here. If you just click on the lock, and then just that locks every layer, so you can't do anything to anything if I just click and drag on it. But then if you just click on the lock for the particular layer you want to work on, it unlocks that one. So the other ones are locked, you can't accidentally draw on them, you can't grab anything, and then you're just working on the layer you want. So I'm going to change my fill to white. I'm also going to change my stroke to white, and then I'm going to use my oval tool, and I'm going to draw a circle roughly the same size. Just going to drag it up there so I can see it. There we go. Oops. So double click it so I've got the line and the fill. I'm going to right click and choose Convert to Symbol. So these are all the steps we went through before. It's just repeating them, just as a reminder. I'm going to call this white ball. Make sure type says movie clip and go OK. It's now a symbol. So if we I just want to see a little bit more room around the stage. So I'm just going to make that 80 up there. So I'm just going to drag that off the stage so we can't see it to start with. Now, we've got a problem here is that by the time, let's say I want this to come on over 2 seconds, my white ball. So if I right click there and choose Insert Keyframe. So that's my start point. That's my end point. So I drag it along. Right click between them and choose Create Classic. But the black ball starts moving right at the start. We don't want that. So what we can do though, without having to redo it and change it all, we can go back here to frame 1. We can just unlock the 8 ball layer. Click once on the keyframe and then let go. And then when we move our mouse over it so it's selected, we'll get that little square. We can then click and hold and drag that keyframe up there. So it won't start moving until that point, which is the exact point that the white ball hits it. We just have to then choose our end point there and line them up so that the point that the white ball comes in contact with the black ball starts moving. So it's probably a bit confusing. Click back to frame 1 and see what happens. Okay, so we've still got one problem to fix, which is that because we moved that, the black ball doesn't actually appear on the stage until there. But that's an easy fix. What we can do is just click once on our 8 ball on the stage. So I click on the frame, and then I click on the black ball, the 8 ball, and I choose Copy, and then I go back here to frame 1, and I choose Edit, Paste in Place. It pastes it exactly where I copied or cut it from. Okay, but because I haven't added a tween or anything like that, it's just going to sit there until the tween starts to move it from that point. So now let's try again. White ball comes on. Okay, pretty cool. So the next problem, obviously, for realism to this, that we'd want it to fix is that as the black ball comes back, we would want it to stop there, because then it comes in contact with the white ball and should send it off the other side. So at that point, I'm going to go right click and choose Insert Keyframe. And then I'm just going to go to the end here, right click and choose Insert Keyframe and move the white ball all the way back off. That's my start and my end point now. The white ball's there, ends there. Right click anywhere between those 2 keyframes to create that classic tween. And that'll mean that because I haven't added a tween here, it's just going to sit in that position. See, it's not moving there as I drag my playhead along. But then once the black ball hits it, it's then going to start moving again. So let's go back to the start, press return. So you could either have the black ball just keep following it like it does there, or you could have make the black ball stop as it hits the white ball. So the easiest way to do that would be, like I said, you can move the keyframes, click on it once, and then click and hold to drag it back to that point, and then just change the position that you want it to be. So about there. Here we go. So now if we go back to the start again, press return, white ball comes in, hits the black ball hits the edge, comes back, hits the white ball goes off. Beautiful. If you want to test it proper, you can go to Control, Test Movie in Animate, or the keyboard shortcut is Command Return or Control Enter on a PC. That brings up a floating window that shows you exactly what your animation will look like in the end, because you can only see what's appearing on the stage. And it loops it. It'll just keep going for as long as the window's open. It'll just loop it. Whatever you've got currently in your animation, it'll just loop that over and over again. It's beautiful. So, Again, if you want, if we go back here, say the white ball doesn't look as good because it's just a white shape, you might want to double click on it. So we've just gone into the edit mode of white ball, you can see there. And you might want to just add something to it. So we can just create a new layer. So we'll just double click on the text for that one and call it white ball. And we might call this one chalk mark. And we'll just use our, where is it, our paint tool there, and choose like a, it's a little impact mark of where it's been hit with a cue. And then we can go back to the scene, and now when that animates, oops, we need to obviously click on frame 1 and go to our properties and add the rotation again, clockwise, maybe twice is enough. And we just need to add it to that point as well. Counterclockwise this time. Let's click on it and type in 2. And I might actually go back to the first bit, so there, and change that to 3. Now if we go command return, ball comes in, hits the black ball, ball hits the edge, bounces back, hits the white ball goes off. Very exciting. And you might see if you just want to tweak it a little bit, it's not going to loop in your finished product anyway, but you can see as the ball comes back here and stops, it's slightly, see, it just moves up just a smidge, it's slightly below where it starts. So you can obviously just go to your white ball there, and just go up one. See, I'll just use the up arrow there. See if that makes a difference. So probably moved the wrong one, to be honest. So it's that point. Press the up arrow again. I'll go back to this end one. There you go, it doesn't move anymore. It does go up a little bit like that, so we just need to fix that, and that should fix that. There we go. Beautiful. So that's the basics of just making a basic animation using your tweens and using objects and just using some of the drawing tools that you've got at your disposal. So next we'll look at how you would be able to then use some of those drawing tools to import your own artwork in and trace around it and add and animate that.